Happy New Year and welcome to Scotty Kilmer Live Car Talk Podcast. Why use my 51 years of fixing cars to answer all your car questions? You notice there's no advertisements flying around here. It's just me telling the truth about cars to help the world out. During the show, remember, type your questions in the live chat. I'll pick the best ones and answer them. The first question is Mr. Bombastic 101. He says, hey, Scotty, in general, how long can shocks last? Well, that's a very good question. And of course, it depends on all kinds of things. The quality of the car you have, where you drive, if you take care of your car and don't let parts wear out that'll wear out the shocks faster, like driving with bald tires. The first thing is you want a quality car. Now take Toyota. I've had Toyotas that had 175,000 miles on them and still had the original shocks or struts on them. They're really well made. Of course, they're lighter cars too, like my Toyota Celica. That's a light car. The heavier a car, the more strain on the shocks and struts, the faster they're going to wear out. So, you get yourself a big old SUV, they're going to wear out faster. It's a heavier vehicle, and it's taking more pounding, and it's going to wear out faster. I've got videos on how you can tell if they're worn out, how to tell if shocks or struts are worn out. You can watch that and give you a clue. But, I've seen guys wear them out in an SUV and say a really poorly made one like a Chrysler in 40,000 miles. And I've seen people in Toyota Corollas have 250,000 with the original one still on. So you just kind of take care of them and buy a good vehicle, and they can last a long time. Heavier they are, though, faster they're going to wear out. Next question. Nick Rubino says, I just bought a 2004 Volvo S40 Turbo. It has 130,000 miles. I bought it for $2,000. Any tips that I can make it last a few years? Okay, first do a lot of praying. Those things can be endless money pits with the turbos on them, especially with an automatic transmission. The weakest thing in that Volvo is the automatic transmission. And most of the customers I have, if they kept those long enough and the tranny went out, they junked the car because they weren't going to put $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 into a car when it's that old. But you want it to last, so baby it. You can drive 80 miles an hour if you want, but don't go 0 to 80 as fast as you can. Do it gradually, because the slower you accelerate to go to a speed, the less strain there is on a car. Now, it is a turbo, so you want to change your oil all the time. Don't listen to any of this crap that people give you. Oh, you can change your oil every 15,000, 20,000 miles. On that thing, I change it every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, period, to make sure that the engine and the turbo, which is the same oil, has clean lubricant in it and won't wear it out faster than normal. Now, sometimes those cars will last quite some time, and you only did pay $2,000. Just make sure that you take care of it, and you don't throw a bunch of money. If it starts to fall apart, just get rid of it and eat the $2,000 rather than put thousands and thousands more into it. Aaron Phillips asks, for the last year in my 05 Pontiac Grand Am GT, when I accelerate from first to second, I have to bring the engine up to 2,500 RPM, then take my foot off the gas, like it's manually shifting. Yeah, your transmission's going out. That's typical on those Pontiacs. That's why they don't make them anymore. They had horrible automatic transmissions. But most automatic transmission cars, when they do start to wear out, that's a trick you can get them to shift. Years ago, I had a lot of customers with old Mercedes 300 diesels. And I tell them, hey, just when you're driving, when you want it to shift, take your foot off the gas, it'll shift to the next gear, then gradually accelerate. And sometimes they drove them years that way and they still ran. But it's a sign that the transmission itself is starting to wear out. It's warning you. But hey, an 05 Grand Am isn't worth that much money anyway, so just baby it. And if it does finally go out, hey, I'd junk it rather than put that kind of money into rebuilding the transmission on that thing. Next question. Smooth Earl says, I'm going to convert a high-top cargo van into a camper. Since Toyota doesn't make one in the USA, what would you choose, the Ford Transit or the Ram ProMaster? Oh, I'd take the Ford Transit. Those are decent vans. I got a lot of customers, and some of them are commercial customers, and they have those Ford Transit vans. And if you take care of them, they can last quite some time. And it would make a good camper, tall. You got to have a lot of room. You want to do the work yourself. go right ahead, but that's a decent vehicle to choose for that. You know, the only other choice, a lot of guys go for the Mercedes ones, but they cost more. So, you're going to get a better price on a Ford for sure. Next question. Balthazar 250 says, got an old Chrysler Daytona in the garage. Hasn't been started in 14 years. Can I take it to a shop and fix her up? But should I spend money rewiring her for the sake of it? I wouldn't. I mean, let's face it, the Chrysler Dodge Daytonas, they really weren't collector's items or anything. And it would be so much work to get that thing up and in decent shape. Generally, it's not worth it. You'll never see the money back. I mean, if it was your grandfather's car or something, you're emotionally involved and you want to get it running and you can do it yourself, give it a try. But I personally wouldn't. They're not worth anything. And, it wasn't like they were something that was really great that you'd want to bring back, like an old classic Mercedes in the 60s or, a 60s Mustang. The Daytona's really never really worth anything. Next question. ESPN Ocho says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying a new Jeep Compass with a two-wheel drive, ace and 6-speed automatic transmission. Could it be reliable? Well, the transmission, yeah, because Toyota makes them. An ace and 6-speed automatics made by Toyota. So, hey, it's a good transmission. And the thing with the Jeeps are, realize, unfortunately, since Fiat took over Chrysler, their quality control has been going down. And it wasn't that great to start out with. I mean, Jeeps are great vehicles when I was a kid, but that was in the 1960s. And now, if you really like them, I mean, at least it's got a good transmission with the 6-speed. But they're still, they're made by Fiat, and their quality just isn't that good. If you really wanted a Jeep, my advice is get an old one that's been reconditioned rather than buying a new one, because that'll always hold its value. Where the new one, their values drop like a stone as they get to be a few years old. Next question. The fattest angry buffalo in the West asks, air versus electric impact wrenches. Okay, I've been an air impact wrench guy my whole life, since I was a kid at my father's gas station. We had a big old compressor, and you can't beat the air tools for power. That's why there's air tools out there. But, and this is a big but, recently they've been making electric power tools a lot better. They're higher voltage, and the higher voltage they are, the more power that they're going to put out. I've seen some that were 36 volt, and I've never personally used one myself, but I've talked to other mechanics, and some of them that do a lot of mobile work, they swear by them, that they'll buy, and they won't buy a cheap one, buy one that's $300-400. And they'll have 2 or 3 battery packs with them charged up. And they swear by them, saying that they can take the tires and everything off with no problems at all. Just realize when you get electric stuff, they've only got a limited amount of power to get big stuff off before they start running out. Where an air compressor, all it does is use the air, and then when the air pressure gets lower, it pumps it back up again, and it's plugged into the wall. So, or if you're a traveling guy, you could have an air compressor that's got a gasoline motor. You start the gasoline motor, and then that runs the compressor. Pretty much unlimited supply there. You don't have to worry about running out of power. Next question. Javier Pacheco says, Scotty, I got a 2000 Ford Explorer with 185,000 miles and it won't pass emissions. Mechanics said it needs a new alternator and a catalytic converter. Is it worth fixing? Should I look for another SUV? Depends what he's going to charge up and what really needs doing. If it needs an alternator, that's no big deal. You could do it yourself. They just bolt on and off. I've got videos on that. Replacing an alternator on your car, Scotty, type that in YouTube. You'll see my videos. See how easy that is to do. As the catalytic converter, if it runs good enough, I have a video Fixing a car with bad catalytic converter. You can put some cleaner in the gas tank and drive it. And a lot of times that'll allow it, when you reset the computer, to pass the emissions test. You might try that first. I wouldn't put a whole bunch of money into it with that kind of mileage on it. I mean, if the guy's going to charge you thousands of dollars or something, I'd say forget it. But you can put an alternator on yourself or price around. It's not that hard of a job. And then try cleaning the cat rather than replacing it. Because if it runs okay, the cat's being inefficient, cleaner a lot of times will fix it for quite some time. Next question. No username available says, hey, Scotty, I got a 1984 Nissan 300ZX Turbo with 125,000 miles and a manual transmission. I notice sometimes the RPM surges as if it's hunting for speed. Any idea what could be causing this? Okay, if you're talking about you're accelerating, and if it surges up and down when you accelerate, your clutch is slipping, you need a new clutch. That's pretty straightforward. If you're confused by that, go to any mechanic and they can road test and say, yeah, your clutch is slipping, you need a clutch. Now, if it's not that, and it surges by itself, like you're driving down the road and you're not accelerating, but going 60 or whatever, it'll start going up and down and up and down. Then you got a problem generally in those in the fuel injection system. A lot of times the mass airflow sensor could go bad, or it could be that the fuel pump is starting to go out and it has pressure, not enough pressure, not enough pressure. And any mechanic with a decent scan tool and a pressure testing gauge can check both the MAF sensor and the fuel pump to see if they're starting to go out. Next question is Ardian Sejul. Hey, what do you think about buying a Mazda RX-8? I can get it cheap with high mileage and rebuild the engine, or is it expensive and don't? Okay, here's the thing. Rotary engines have been a failure throughout history for two reasons. One, they're generally gas hogs. They're tiny little engines, but they get horrible gas mileage. The original one, the Mazda Cosmo in a car, some of those things got like 5 miles a gallon. They're a little bitty station wagon. But they could run on any kind of fuel. That was one of their upsides. The other thing is they always end up burning up and burning oil while you drive them because they have triangular rotors in them. Each one has a seal, apex seal, 1, 2, 3. And when those seals go bad, they always do, they burn oil. Now, if you can get one really cheap and you want to get it rebuilt or have a pro rebuild it or try to rebuild it yourself, go right ahead. If you get it cheap enough, they're not bad vehicles. It's just that those engines wear out fast. And what I'd do if I were you first was price a rebuilt one, because there's guys that rebuild them all the time. And if you can get a decent price on one, you don't mind spending that money for whatever cheap price you get it, it can be fun to drive around. They are fun to drive. Just don't think you can get it and then put 20,000 miles a year on it. It'll fall apart again. So if it's a toy, why not? It could be fun. They are fun to drive. Next question. Rodney King says, hey, Scotty, I got an '08 Toyota Corolla. When I go over 70 miles, I hear a humming sound. What could it be? Generally, that's wheel bearings. When you go at a faster speed and you hear a humming sound, it's generally wheel bearings. So how you can test wheel bearings is when there's nobody around, go that speed, and then gradually veer to the left and veer to the right. And if you do that, and when you veer to the left, the noise gets quieter, that means the right wheel bearing is wearing. If you veer to the right and the noise gets quieter, it's the left bearing. And if it doesn't make any difference, it's loud both ways, then both wheel bearings are gone. It's a pretty easy test, but that's typical on something that old. The wheel bearings will just be worn out. Next question. Boston Matt says, what is the best truck under 10,000? Well, there aren't in the United States if you're talking new. I'm assuming you're talking used. You know, it depends what you want. If you want a solid, reliable, smaller pickup truck, get a Toyota Tacoma. Things can run forever. I've seen them with 1,000,000 miles on them. If you want a full-size pickup, get an F-150. Get a used one for that price, because that's a good full-size pickup truck. You know, the Toyota Tundras are good full-size pickup trucks too, but odds are you're not going to find one under 10 grand because they hold their value too well. But you can find the Tacomas. They made so many of them. They sold millions of them that you can go back a few years and find some that are still really in decent shape and are well under $10,000. Next question. Gregorio Maselli says, Scotty, is a Toyota Yaris reliable? It looks very cheaply made, but still Toyota. Oh, yes, they're very reliable, but they're not really Toyotas, they're Mazdas. They don't make them anymore here in the United States anyways, but they were just basically Mazdas. The Toyota didn't want to make a really cheap car, so they just got in cahoots with Mazda, and they're basically Mazda cars. But I've got customers with them, and yeah, they are cheaply made, and they're kind of rattly when you drive them down the road, but they can go a long way. You know, like Toyota, the last really cheap car they made was the Toyota Tercel. And I guess it gave people a bad taste, so Toyota decided we're not going to make those. They stopped making them. And I guess they just figured, oh, we'll get a Mazda, call it the Toyota Yaris, and just sell them that way, and we won't even bother making them ourselves. So, but they are reasonably reliable cars. Kind of tinny. I don't particularly like them. I like a little better. The Corollas really ride a lot better, and you only pay a little bit more extra for them. Next question. Mark Vegas says, Scotty, I'm going to get a 2006 Lexus IS350. What do you think? Great solid car, or is it too old? Ha! My wife's driving a 2002 ES300, and that thing is still solid. Rides like a dream. It's not too old. Now, depending on the mileage, you don't want to pay too much. You know, if it's got 200,000 miles, you don't want to pay too much because it's a lot of mileage. But they can still be solid, reliable cars. But as anything else, when you're buying a used car, find a guy like me to check out the vehicle for you. We'll put our scan tool, take it for a road test, and in about an hour, we can tell you everything you'd ever want to know about that car and whether it's worth buying or not. Because you can't trust anyone when you're buying a used car except the mechanic that you trust is going to tell you the truth. Next question. Elevated Science says, Scotty, what do you think about the Infiniti G35 Coupe? I bought an 06 G35 automatic for $5,000 with 110,000 miles. It runs strong. Okay, those are very fun cars to drive. The only problem is, as they age, they can be very, very expensive to repair. Now, you paid $5,000. It's got 110,000 miles. Generally, they don't start falling apart until they get maybe 170, 180 or more. So baby it. Even though it's a fast car, don't drive around like a maniac. Baby it. And you never know how it's going to last. You didn't pay that much for it. I mean, you know, you paid so much less than the original owner paid for it. And hey, you get your money's worth if it lasts for a couple of years for you. Just baby it, though. Don't drive it like a maniac race car, because they can go really fast, but then they have a tendency of falling apart, especially when they're automatic transmissions. That's the weakest part of them. Next question. Coins 900 says, Scotty, I want to get a classic car as my first car. Any suggestions? Well, it depends on what kind of car you want, how much you want to spend. You know, you want a real classic, get like a 67 Mustang, but you're going to pay a lot of money for one. They're very expensive. It all depends on what you want to pay and what you want to get. Now, let's say you want a 60s car. Well, hey, if you want something that's kind of a little bit unique, is going to cost this much, realize the Mustang was based on the same chassis as the Ford Fairlane or a Ford Falcon. And you can get those a lot cheaper. Fix one of those up. They can run quite well, especially if they got the V8 engine in them, and you're going to pay a lot less. It all depends on how much you want to pay and what kind of a vehicle you want to get. But, you know, if you stick to like a Ford from that era, parts are readily available, they can run a really long time, that's not a bad way to go. Next question. Worte Yamats 22 says, Scotty, I live in a mostly warm countries. Never experienced wintertime. My recommended oil was 15W30. 15W40. Is it safe to use 5W40? And is it safe to use SACRDI specific oil to a non-CRDI engine? No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't use SACRDI specific oil in a non-CRDI engine. I wouldn't do that. Stick to the 1540. It recommends that. And that's thin enough oil anyways. You don't need to go thinner. It's not going to hurt anything. There's not all that much difference, but still, it was designed for 1540. Just stick with it. You really don't want to go lighter oil than recommended. You're best to stick to whatever they recommend. Next question. AR Conquest says, Scotty, I bought a 2002 Buick Century with 50,000 miles for $5,000. Did I get a good deal? There's a 4-speed automatic transmission and a V6. Okay, well, you're kind of in a bizarre situation. You got to realize that's a 14-year-old car. 14-year-old, it's 2002, what am I saying? It's a 17-year-old car. Now, it's only got 50,000 miles, and you paid $5,000. So, for the mileage, that's a good price. But for the year, you kind of overpaid because the Buick Century isn't really a collector's item or anything. But if it runs good and everything works, hey, be happy because look what a brand new car costs. And if that's the real mileage with 50,000 real miles, it can still go quite some time. And back then, they were making them better than they're making them today. So, it could be a fine deal for that. I would have just paid less, but just because of the age. 17-year-old Buick, it doesn't go for that much money. Next question. Richards Lellis says, what do you think about a 69 Buick Wildcat and a 78 Cadillac DeVille? Were they reliable back in the day? Which one's better now? Which one should I get, not get? Oh, definitely get the 69 Buick Wildcat. My grandfather owned one of those, and he was a mechanic. Those were nice cars. And they're somewhat collectible. The Cadillac DeVille, they were cookie cutter cars. And 78 Cadillac was making the greatest cars in the world. They started to make them cheaper. A 69 Buick Wildcat, that's a cool car to get. Get that and fix it up. Well, if you have to, if it doesn't need fixing up, just buy it as is and take care of it. That's definitely what I do. I'd stay away from that Cadillac because I had a customer actually bought that same one. It was an endless money pit, and he ended up selling it for about $8,000 less than he had into the thing. When he was finally done, his wife made him take it out of the garage. She was sick of looking at it. Next question. Exophthalmus1 says, hey, Scotty, are you a Fallout character brought to life? Okay, well, I'm old. I'm 65. I don't know what a Fallout character is. So maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. I didn't know what a Fallout character is. I suppose it's some kind of superhero. I don't know what this thing people have about these superheroes. Why that stuff even came out. I guess it's because our society is so messed up. They have to have this fantasy about superheroes because most people's lives are so boring and dull that they got to pretend that there's some superheroes out there. I don't know. Who knows what's happening in our society nowadays? Next question. Nicholas Isatalo says, Scotty, is it safe to keep driving with a leaking power steering pump as long as I keep replacing the fluid? Okay. You keep replacing the fluid, it's not going to damage the power steering system because you keep the fluid up. But it depends where the fluid's going because it's got to be leaking somewhere. And if it's leaking all over your engine, it can ruin the alternator, it can ruin the fan belts, it can get on sensors and destroy them. And if it's a really bad leak, it can squirt on the exhaust and start a fire. So you want to see where the leak is actually coming from. And if it's just kind of dripping on the ground, you want to keep adding it. Go right ahead. I've had customers do that for years, especially if it's a small leak and say they only have to put a bottle of those 8-ounce things in once every month or something like that. Then it's not that big of a deal. Next question. JC says, man, Scotty did time in prison. He's a smart guy. Well, you must be in an alternative universe because I've never been to prison or jail. I never got caught for anything. I spent most of my life fixing cars, I mean, I'm busy working all the time. I don't have time to get in trouble. When I was younger, I went to university. And, hey, I always lived on campus. So, you walked around everywhere. Kind of hard to get in trouble when you're just walking around. If you went out drinking, you're not going to get any trouble because you're just walking around in the snow in Canada. So, next question. That one gamer says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying an '08 Toyota Tundra. What's your opinion on a 5.7 liter iForce V8 from 2007 to 2013? They're very strong engines if you take care of them. They can last a really long time. Of course, that said, it's a big truck, it's a big engine, and they get really horrible gas mileage. If you don't mind poor gas mileage, go out and buy it if it's in decent shape. Now, if somebody has beat the heck out of it and didn't take care of it, of course, you don't want to buy it. It's, the same basic engine that they put in the Lexuses. They're complicated engines, and they're super expensive to rebuild if people finally wear them out. So you want a guy like me to check it out before you buy it. But they can last an awful long time if they're taken care of. Next question. Rubens Peralta says, Scotty, I bought an Accord 2013 with a CVT with 90,000 miles. Should I change the transmission now? Yes, but pay a professional mechanic to do it because it's very hard to do correctly. And you want to have it done correctly, and you want to use the Honda fluid. Hondas are very particular about that. But I would have it changed by a professional because you don't want to take a chance with the CVT transmission. They are so super expensive to rebuild. So pay a mechanic who knows what he's doing, and using Honda fluid. And I would do it then probably every 60,000 miles after that. Next question. JC Rose says, Scotty, 04 Pontiac Vibe. Any thoughts? Okay, the Pontiac Vibes, they were. Same thing as the Toyota Matrix. They're great vehicles. Go ahead and buy one if you think about buying one, if it's in decent shape. Most of the parts are readily interchangeable, and those Matrixes, my wife's got '07. It's a great vehicle. The only thing, they stopped making them. And I thought, why did they stop making them? They were such great vehicles. They were basically a Toyota Corolla with a different body anyways. And now I noticed last year they came out with the Toyota Corolla hatchback. It's a Matrix. They just decided to call it a Toyota Corolla hatchback. They just brought the Matrix back and called it a Toyota Corolla hatchback. And they can last a really long time. I mean, those things are well made. Joseph Gardy says, what do you think of an SLK 55 AMG 2015 model, please? Okay, I got a customer with one. They're really fun to drive. But if you're the owner, you better have a lot of money. Because my customer that owns one, they pay me a lot of money to fix that thing. It breaks all the time. I mean, one of those things, the shock absorbers are like $1,700 a piece, and there's 4 of them. You got to change them in pairs. You're talking about, woo, moolah. If you got the moolah, you want to spend it, you want to drive around that thing, go right ahead. But if you don't want to spend a lot of money, don't even think about buying that thing. They are endless money pits as they age. Next question. Gus Burkhoff says, Dear Scotty, what's your opinion on the new Alfa Romeos built by Fiat? The old Alfas were popular with being unreliable. What's your opinion on the new Alfas? Well, they haven't changed. They're still Italian sports cars, They're fun to drive, but they fall apart. I mean, I don't think the Italians are ever going to change with that, They're fast, they zip around, but they're unreliable, and they always have been. I mean, they're fun to drive. I've had customers decades ago that had them, and I like driving them around. I made a lot of money fixing them. I worked on quite a few of them, but I'd never buy one because they're too unreliable, and I don't think they've changed any at all. If anything, they're more complex than they ever were, and even less reliable, because the higher the complexity, the more unreliable something's going to get when it breaks, and it's complex to fix. At least the old ones are simple when they had carburetors on them. You could fix them, but now, not only do they break, but they're harder to figure out what's wrong with them. Hunter Foster says, hey, Scotty, have you ever worked on a hand crank Ford Model T before? Yeah, when I was a kid in the 60s, one of the guys in Lewiston, New York, where my father's garage was, and they had a Model T Ford that we worked on. And we'd work on it. Matter of fact, in the back, my grandfather, talk about a hoarder. This is in the 1960s. He still had Model T water pumps and mufflers in the back, stored with all the parts. When they finally shut down the garage, he ended up selling that stuff in bulk to a guy that did Model T parts. So, yeah, I worked on it. They were really maintenance high. Every winter, you'd have to tear the engines down, clean the valves. They're really, compared to modern cars, they weren't reliable at all. But they were the first big sold cars, so a lot of people bought them. Well, that's it for this week. Now, remember, every day of the week, I upload 2 videos to the Scotty Kilmer channel, so subscribe. You'll never miss another one. And I'm here Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, answering the world's car questions, and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So catch me on Saturday if you don't watch any of my videos till then.